Good afternoon and welcome everyone to today's webinar, 3 Things I Wish I Knew Before Selling VoIP. My name is Jason Nadeau. I am the product manager for SureWeb's various voice services, and I'm joined by James Welburn, our technical solutions advisor.
Yeah, Jason, we can't see we don't see your camera there. Oh, there's one little cat running across. There you go. Welcome back. I
All
was like,
right, super.
where's this
Thank
voice coming from? That's phenomenal. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, James. So today's webinar is going to be a little bit more on the education side than maybe the sales enablement side. We're going to be going through various subjects, such as we're going to be discussing the VoIP industry as a whole. We're going to talk about the process that's involved in selling VoIP and deploying VoIP services at your customers. And we're going to go through some of the best practices that we find we regularly explain to our partners.
Yeah, absolutely, and it is still very much on the enablement side. It's little, and really where the idea for this webinar came from is Jason and I, obviously we get to work very closely together, and we're saying, you know, like what are the things, like Jason mentioned, things that we see often that repeat themselves, and even places where we got cut sort of earlier on in our careers as well. So it is definitely to train to get you more comfortable with it all is definitely a big part of it, but to help you to avoid those pitfalls. So it is still a little bit on the enablement side, but just some ideas, just some ways to not get caught, as you know, earlier on in any process, there's little hiccups. So we're going to try and avoid all of that for you.
Super, thank you. So our first section, VoIP in general. So it's really important to understand there's a lot of moving pieces for a VoIP call and with a PBX. If we look at the slide here, we'll see with a typical call flow, we're going to have a PC that's connected to someone's IP phone, which is going to be connected to their network switch, which is going to be connected to their router, which then has its own internet connection. And then the internet providers have their own backbones before reaching Cloud PBX and our chain of PSTN carriers, before going off to the actual telephone poles and the copper wires to finish at the end user. So there's definitely a lot of moving parts here.
Yeah, and this is something that definitely, and I really appreciate this slide. It's probably one of my favorites. We do it often internally as well. As obviously we try and keep our team up to date, but really having an understanding of the whole process, because sometimes it seems as easy as plugging in a phone and well, my phone should just work. But it's really just to give an overview, like Jason mentioned, there's a lot more going on. So a lot of stuff that we can't control, but some of it is a little bit outside, as you see, like ISP backbones, for example. So there's some parts of it that we can help, we can guide, but it's very clear to set expectations is really, I think, a big takeaway for me on this one here. It's really that you can only control what you can control. So yeah, just sort of a little industry awareness. And like Jason mentioned, there's a lot of moving parts here.
Right. And you know, there's certain parts that we have more control over, and there's other parts that you guys as partners can have more control over than we would over with support at SureWeb. So you know, anything involving the actual cloud PBX and the entire setup of the call flow and the call routing and the IVRs and the hunt groups, that's 100% on us. And we work with a series of carriers, you know, for the sake of redundancy. If anything happens to any of those carriers, we do kind of take on that responsibility, and it's 100% on us to go fix it. A good example of a situation though that's kind of outside of all of our control would be the worldwide PSTN network. So essentially, you know, the poles outside with the wires going through them, what does happen regularly, a fiber cable might get cut, and that means an entire area can go down, whether it be their internet services or their voice over IP services, and generally cable TV and a whole bunch of other things at the same time. So those things are out of our control, but we will notify our customers anytime there's a known issue in a specific region.
I'll let you move on because we will touch a little bit more on sort of all the components in just a slide or two as well. But yeah, like he says, if the telephone pole goes down outside of my building and the internet goes down, well, we definitely have some contingency measures in place. So we can, obviously the mobile app would be something that would continue to run regardless of the local network. But yeah, just definitely having that awareness and just setting expectations with your customers, knowing that, hey, like just like your current provider, these major telcos that are running on their POTS lines, they own the infrastructure. If a pole goes down, like Jason mentioned, that area is down. There's nothing any one provider can really do at that point, apart from those who own the infrastructure. So just having a contingency plan in place of these what ifs. So just to be a little bit more aware, it's a question that we get, probably daily. So this is something that I think it's great to kind of touch on here.
Absolutely. So we put in a few industry facts just from things that have happened kind of in the last few years. So outages in the telco industry in general, as a whole, are common. They happen, and thankfully it's not always in the same area. So it's not something that we're going to realize or notice on a daily or even a monthly basis for most of our partners. You work in a specific area. When for us, we kind of have an overview of the world and more specifically like Canada, US, and there are regular issues like that that'll happen in certain local areas. That's nothing to do with our PBX. It's nothing to do with our carriers. It's really a physical issue with hardware or wiring in certain areas. So it's good to understand that. If you have a customer that just swapped over to a cloud PBX phone system, and now the next day, just by fluke, they can't call this number because there's a local region. Reflex is to blame the new system, but more often than not, it's not the case. But we'll
Yeah.
help you figure it out and pinpoint it, and we'll let you know, of course.
Yeah, and then again, it's just having that conversation. It's being transparent. It's like as I mentioned earlier, right? It's we can control what we can control. I often in that scenario, I'll kind of say, okay, well, if you have a neighboring business or someone very close to you, we'll try that as well, because chances are, as Jason mentioned, it's going to be localized. So it's not going to be unique to them by any means, and it's just kind of, hey, have your neighbor do the same call. They're going to have the same result on their other provider. It's definitely not a provider issue. But just little things like this, I find that kind of help to normalize a little bit, just to create that understanding for our customers and for our partners alike. Obviously, right? We get the calls when something goes down, regardless if it's local or if it's anything else. So yeah, so just to create a little bit more of an awareness, and that's very much again the theme of today.
So more specifically, who does what? We're looking at the exact same call flow that we saw originally at the beginning of this presentation. So we like to work mostly with partners, IT professionals such as yourselves. That way we can deliver more of a whole product to the end user. So we count on our partners to take care of the local network at the customer site. That means setting up QoS, quality of service, so that any kind of voice traffic will always, always, always have priority over the rest of the data traffic on the local network. That's imperative to get excellent HD voice quality. They're responsible, you are responsible, the partner's responsible for the switch or the router. If it's not you that's actually responsible for it, that's okay. But if there's something wrong with the switch, we will, and there's issues affecting the phones, we'll end up through our troubleshooting process at that switch and say, we need someone to take a look at that or to swap it out or something along those lines.
So yeah, maybe a little spoiler alert. I think we're going to talk about it later. But yeah, having access to the networking equipment is definitely one of our best practices, or something we strongly recommend. So again, if it's not you who owns the infrastructure, who put that in place or even has access to it, definitely going through a VoIP deployment. I had a little checklist of things I needed before I would start any deployment. And that was definitely one. It's who do I contact? How quickly can I reach them? Because like Jason mentioned, if we do need to do something on the router, maybe we need to set up a QoS. Obviously, if you can't get into the router, there's not much luck there. So having that resource, knowing who that is, if ever it's not yourself. And it could be a good way for you to win that business, and just being, like, this person is managing the router, but I'm doing all your productivity and everything else internally, maybe your Azure, your backups. Well, why not put it all in my court, because I am here and I am able to offer you really a multitude of services. So definitely something I think Jason would agree there, but it's something we'd strongly, strongly suggest. Yeah.
Oh yeah, and we insist even, you need to be able to go in the router. You can't just show up in a place where you have no access on the network, plug in phones, and expect everything to just be fine and dandy for all of time. A lot of people you can just go and plug it in and it'll probably be fine for like 80-95% of the calls, but we are aiming for 100, so you need the QoS to get that, to get there. One little gray zone I could see is the ISP backbone. We actually changed the slide. It is gray now, apparently. So ISP backbones is a bit of a tricky one. I'm going to step back. This slide touches a lot to call quality issues. So the actual audio that we're hearing. So it's worth mentioning that 99% of the time, a call quality issue is actually going to be caused by something on the local network where it's happening, or the ISP provider of that local network. 99% of the time, that's what it is. When there's an issue on the PSTN, or if, God forbid, there would be an issue with our actual cloud PBX, we would be aware of that ridiculously quickly. First of all, it would affect everybody, and then we're going to be touching on this later, but we've got a lot of tools that would automatically be detecting this. So for sure, when we get a call regarding call quality issues, very first thing we're doing is troubleshooting the local network and running some tests. We're going to go through these tests later on, so I'm not going to go too deep into it. But we can help you prove that there's an issue with the ISP if there's an issue with the ISP.
Yeah, and maybe a little out of turn here, but I know I've offered this to some of our partners, and they've definitely taken advantage. But like, even our support techs will even work with you in communicating this to the ISP. As Jason mentioned, we can give you sort of the phrase to say, and even if you coordinate the call, we can kind of tag us in once you're already online with them as well, and we can further help to explain that with you as well. So something to note, again, it's just to be mindful of. But again, ShareWeb is here to do, as you can see, we can do a good part of it here, but it's the partnership, as Jason mentioned, that's going to help us cover more ground and be able to offer a more stable or a more reliable solution together, really.
Yeah, thank you so much, James. That's really important to stress, right? We don't want to scare anybody here. Everything that we're showing you today, we're there to help you to take care of it and to give you, the tools that you need to get it done. So we can't set up the QoS for you, but if there's call quality issues, we're going to check the logs and we're going to find out, okay, it's not on these steps of the chain. So now we're down to the ISP or the local network issue. And then we're going to send you tools, little programs to run to start doing virtual IP calls, 10 simultaneous calls, and it's going to start measuring the packet loss and the jitter and things along those lines to give you something to give to the ISP to help fix it. So we're always, always, always here to help, even for the sections that are out of our control.
Absolutely.
So as I touched on earlier, to be able to provide the 5.9 SLA that we do provide, we've got a lot of automated testing tools. So these are running 24/7. We'll get automatic alerts if there's anything wrong via the PSTN. So that pole that fell, that fiber that got cut, and then you got a certain area that's down, we will put it on SureWeb's network status page. So if you don't know about it, you should know about it. We have an online status page that will always let you know of any kind of outage, whether it be with our equipment or even the general PSTN, because that still affects our customers. So we think it's worth notifying you.
Absolutely.
Our system automatically places phone calls inbound and outbound on every single one of our carriers in our chain of multiple carriers to make sure that they're all up all the time. And if one is down or is having any kind of an issue, it's automatically removed from our system. It's kind of disabled we're notified on our end to start looking into it, and then everything else keeps running as is, again, thanks to our chain of carriers.
Yeah, it's like Jason mentioned, right? It's not to put any fear in here, but really just to let you know that there's a lot more going on to what meets the eye. For end users, it's I pick up a phone, it calls, and it's that black and white. But for you, for the expert, for the professional in this field, again, we're always here, but it's just to broaden your awareness of it all as well. And just so you can see some of the steps. And I know there's pages. You could probably have a webinar on just our measures there. But just to give you a quick sample into just some of the more popular, I guess, or the more visible tests that we're doing, just to let you know that we are working on the PSTN, things that are out of our control to an extent. Well, just being aware is definitely sort of half that battle. Excellent.
Yes. Thank you. And by the way, there's a question section within the webinar. So if you have any questions, please ask them as we go. We will take time at the end of the webinar to answer as many questions as we can, and we might answer some as we go. So to answer one person's question right off the bat, there is a checklist that James mentioned for the deployment process.
What was the question? Sorry.
Basically, you mentioned the checklist, and the question is, where do we get this checklist? You know, how do we go through it?
Wonderful.
So we're actually going to be touching on this right about now. Actually, when we go through the process explained, there's going to be a lot of links, sections to go to. They're mostly documents that are in the ShareWeb toolbox that I hope you're all aware of. It's shareweb.com/toolbox. Lots and lots and lots of important information in there. And we're going to be sending the presentation to all the attendees after this. So at the same time, you're going to be able to get to these documents through there as well. If ever you're not finding anything, as always, reach out to your ShareWeb account manager. They'll find a document for you. They'll email it right to you.
Absolutely. Excellent. Did we, I think we had a question we were going to
yes, thank you
as well.
so
Just
much for reminding me.
the big orange slide there, I couldn't miss it.
So we've got a few questions for you throughout this presentation, just to, you know, it could help us drive what topics we're going to be specifically touching on or not. First question is, are you currently reselling VoIP services? It doesn't have to be through ShareWeb, just through anywhere. It could be on-prem systems, it could be a competitor. Are you selling VoIP services right now? I'm going to let this go for go ahead, James.
Oh yeah, no, he was going to let this go for about a minute or so, I'm guessing. No, yeah, I was going to say it's just to get a feel for if you are currently doing it, if you had any interest, if your customers are asking, and how sort of generally comfortable you are. In all honesty, it can be somewhat daunting for any new venture, whether that be telecom, even though you have a supported provider, but anything new is always a little bit intimidating. So yeah, it's just to see where you are on your journey here.
Yeah. So thank you very much for your responses. James touched on a second question that's kind of related. For those of you that are selling it or are considering selling it, so you don't already have to be doing it, how comfortable are you selling VoIP services? So we got very comfortable, hesitant, not comfortable at all. Same idea, I'm going to keep it going about 20 seconds just to give everybody a chance to answer the poll questions. And again, it's very, very appreciated that you take the time to answer these. It really helps us even going forward for future webinars. All right. So I'm going to close the poll and we're going to be moving on.
Awesome. Did you have any of the, how did it look overall?
Overall, it's kind of half and half as for who's selling VoIP and who's not.
Okay.
Which is very interesting.
It's a good ratio.
And we've got, I guess the winner for the how comfortable are you, the majority are hesitant. And that doesn't surprise me at all. I kind of wish I could do an ad hoc follow-up question now for the people that are hesitant, is it because you've done it before and you've been burnt by it or you had a bad time? Um, so I've seen a whole lot of that. I've got a couple of people saying no audio. James, are you still hearing me?
Yeah, I am.
Okay. So, VoIPs came out, I think, in the early 2000s when it started being popular. During that time, there was an explosion of VoIP. Everyone was trying to make their own VoIP system. Asterisk was kind of deployed, open source, it's great. But the ISPs weren't there. The QoS on the routers wasn't so much a thing. The managed switches wasn't so much a thing. Basically, all the processes that the industry, that we've created over the last almost 20 years weren't there before. So it's changed. If you got burnt because you tried it 5, 10, 15 years ago, everything's changed a lot. And especially when you have someone like SureWeb on your side, because we're not just giving you a framework and saying, here you go with it. We're setting it all up for you. We're just asking you to explain in human words in English or French how you'd like it to be set up, the names, the emails, addresses, etc.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so definitely, as Jason mentioned, then the process is something that we wanted to touch on as well, as we did sort of like an industry overview on really what are we getting into, and how definitely ShareWeb is here to support, and now a little bit more granular here on some of the key facets, and there's probably one or two more, not to instill fear in anyone here, but we figured these are sort of the main points, and again, it's just things that we see. Either we both lived through, or individually we lived through them in the past, or things that we see our partners kind of going through now, and just little questions, like more commonly asked questions that we get. So it's really just to take the time to, again, a little step by step, and we're not doing amazing on time so far, but we'll try and cover as much as we can here. And again, you guys reach out to your account reps, reach out to Jason, myself, as well. And we'll definitely go step by step. Our onboarding team, as many of you have worked with, I see some of the attendees here today. I think many of you can attest to what level they're there to support you and to work with you, and to help avoid some of the common, let's say, oversights that we'll look at during our process here.
Yes. So let's dig into them a little bit more, right? So we got them listed out here, and I think it's really worth fleshing them out. So first section would be identifying the needs.
Yeah.
So nobody likes making a quote for the client, showing up, installing everything, and then all of a sudden there's a bunch of things that no longer work, that never got mentioned. Um, Again, I've been doing this for 20 some odd years, and it's just a fact that you can't go to an end user and just say, give me your very specific requirements, write exactly that down, and then leave, and that's what you do. They're not from the industry, right? They use their phones, they think about it, but they're not from the industry. So there's certain things that you got to ask and look out for.
And even to build on that as well, even if they're like, yeah, not being from the industry is definitely a part of it. But I've often run into where it's interdepartmental sort of miscommunications there. So maybe the ops manager will say, this is what we need, and we need a call queue, and I need hunt groups, and it's that easy. But then you get into, let's say, a customer service, where they have agents maybe, whether it be sort of logging in, logging out of queues, or different features there as well. So yeah, trying to do, I used to do a little walkthrough of each department head, and just kind of say, hey, here's what we're looking at in terms of functionality. I wouldn't do the whole pitch, but like a little 5 minutes on what does your department do. Something else, and I'd imagine Jason needs to do something similar, was I would actually call through their phone system, and just see, press 1, where do I land? Okay, go back, press 2 now through the menu. What happens then? And sometimes you'll find little tricks, and I used to do that on site, so you can actually see the departments reacting, and you'd see, oh, all phones are ringing here. Now I know this is the type of ring group we're looking at. So these little things, I think, will really avoid some of those missing questions, those oversights, really, as people like Jason mentioned aren't from the industry. They're not studying and practicing and writing out their phone system or verbalizing it. So it's really a question of you getting in there, you digging. Again, we'll provide some tips and tricks, but yeah, really getting a good feel for it all is super important.
Absolutely. So you start with the the basic stuff of just, how many extensions are there? So how many actual phones and users? We're going to want to know how many published phone numbers. And we're saying published on purpose. Traditionally on analog systems, we had cascading lines. Remember those old systems with line 1, line 2, line 3, line 4, and when 1 was busy, went to 2, when 2 was busy, went to 3, and so on and so forth. Um, Back in those days, each one of those lines actually had its own separate phone number, and it was just programmed on the telco end that when this phone number was busy, it forwards to this phone number, and when that phone number is busy, it forwards to that other phone number. In the world of VoIP, we you don't need other phone numbers for the cascading to work. You just need that main number that you give out, and then you could get as many phone calls on that number as you want. So that's why how many published phone numbers. Don't just take their phone bill and give it and go ahead and move over all the other phone numbers that are just for the sake of cascading phone lines. You don't need those anymore. You could save that.
Yeah, just to handle the overflow. Yeah, that was something that was
Exactly.
so common.
Yeah.
Um, I think something else, and I think they did a pretty good job on putting this together here. But it's really the is there any paging system? There's something too that we see quite often. That's
Hmm.
just, well, I just pressed 9 and it would page to my warehouse in the back. Like,
That's right.
that's perfect. That's entirely something we can handle, and we can help with you at very minimum. But these are questions, again, it's to ask. Like, you don't want to go and do your whole deployment. Like, again, Jason, you nailed it earlier. It's, you don't want to go do it all and then, oh well, this doesn't work now. So yeah, I understand it doesn't, and it doesn't work to your liking, and my job is to make that work for you. But doing that little extra digging, walking around, again, just really getting into your customer's mind or into their mindset, as many as you do, I'm sure, is it through your own MSP practices, but now also take that outside of the virtual and really into the physical environment of the customers as well. It goes such a long way.
Right. So that scoping is super important. And, I don't want anyone to feel bad though. It's no matter how much scoping you do, for sure, every single install, there's going to be little things that they forgot to mention. Every company is different, but that's okay. That's normal. Anything's possible. So, you're going to gather the requirements. You're going to set it up. You're going to give them the best practice advice that we're going to be sharing with you during the onboarding process. And, then when they go live, they might completely change their mind and want a different setup. That's normal. You got to be there for your client, and we'll be there for you, and we're going to get it done. And it's no problem at all.
And just the last thing on this side, I think it's super pertinent as well. Then we will, because I said we're not doing fantastic on time. But the alarm system, ATMs, these are things that constantly get overlooked, as they don't kind of draw the link between the alarm system and a phone line. A lot of these sort of security providers do work on regular POTS lines. They'll often piggyback on top of your existing service. So what happens? How are you going to, what's the next phase once we remove these copper lines? How are these going to be handled? So just a quick call to those providers, to the alarm is a big one. And just say, hey, is there an alternative? Like, a lot of them do have, whether it be GSM or their own internet-based solutions as well. So there are different ways. POS machines are notorious for that. So these are little things, again, is you don't want to do the cutover. Their ATM is on their main line, we poured it out, and now their ATM doesn't work anymore, or their POS or what have you. So little things like this, again, it's all things that we'll try and cover with you during the onboarding, but just really having a good feel for what they need and what's going to be next. We'll save some of these. Again, the alarm one is one I got caught on years and years ago, but it's I needed it to be here just so none of you follow suit.
Well, thank you for sharing that, James. Yeah, that's why we're here, right? We're sharing our experiences. James, you've done installs for what, 10 years?
I did deployments. I was about 3.5 years in deployments. So doing the installs and after sales service, and then more into the distribution side of things, so more on the hardware side before. But yeah, in those 4 years, I definitely did get a good share. I don't have the 20 as you do there. But yeah, it was just enough to learn some things that, again, they got me once. There's you just kind of put in a process in place, and then you avoid it down the road. So hopefully we'll be able to save some of you that that little
Yeah.
day of fear in my eyes there.
So the next step once you've identified the needs, you know their setup. At this point, obviously, you're going to be sharing all of this with our onboarding team. If we haven't already mentioned it, the onboarding team is kind of like a dedicated project manager for every single new install. So when you do sell PBX to one of your customers, you get your own dedicated project manager that's going to be going through all of this with you. So next step would be the actual network assessment. You want to make sure that the network that you're on, as we were talking about earlier, is able to provide VoIP traffic. We have an online testing tool that will do 10 simultaneous calls and measure, jitter, packet loss, and the route towards our servers.
And that's a tool that will provide, again, that will offer to you. Our onboarding team will work with you, even help you to interpret these results as well. Again, it's the 5 Ps there, something I kind of say internally there, but like the prior planning prevents poor performance. So just doing your homework, knowing you're ready, knowing if there's anything we should address beforehand, will definitely make a smooth transition, either to the cloud or from another provider. So let's kind of not make the same mistakes. So this is a way we can definitely help to avoid a lot of that. Perfect. I think we touched on this one. Oh, go ahead.
Oops, sorry. I'm actually going to step back for a second. And at the same time, this is the place where you can bring in some extra value, even on top of what we're bringing to the table. So you might want to take this opportunity to replace their switches to get PoE switches. So that way, the switch itself will power the physical telephone on their desk instead of having a separate power adapter for each single user. You might decide to upgrade their cabling. Maybe they've still got some old plain Cat5, not even the Cat5e cabling. You might want to go and say, hey, at this point, let's upgrade the office to Cat6 with new switches that are PoE. And then you're going to set up the VLAN to have the proper QoS so that all the voice traffic has priority. So below in tools and resources, and you're going to see this on the slides that come, these, when you get the presentation, are clickable links towards the actual documents or testing tools.
Awesome. Yeah, and the next sort of adventure here, the next sort of step in the process, let's say, would be to look a bit more at deporting. So now we know that we know what our customer needs. We know the network is sufficient, the infrastructure is in place to be able to deploy the solution. Well, now the next step is for us to actually start the deployment. And a big part of that is definitely having a phone number. And again, we have more links on there as well. But yeah, going through that process is something that is quite, again, it can be daunting. We are here, we do take care of it for you, so we do remove that headache. It was something that used to irk me, and I used to try and put off on my colleagues as much as humanly possible. But again, Cheryl and the team, and Jason will definitely speak to it, but we've done a lot to really remove some of that for you.
Yeah, so the key here really is to work with your project manager during the onboarding. Pretty much the entire onboarding process, the best thing you can do to have it go smoothly is to read carefully or listen carefully to the instructions and the advice that's given to you by your onboarding agent, and just work together as a team, you the partner and your project manager, to make the deployment go through as quick as possible. So something that we see often within this slide, we see the port in form on the right. That's the document that we would ask our partner to fill out on behalf of the customer, listing the phone numbers they have and whether or not we're porting them. After that, our onboarding agent is going to kind of look at their telecom invoice and look at this port in form and check that everything matches up. Small differences like missing the suite number and the address can mean that the losing carrier is going to refuse the port.
Again, it's not it's not sort of that it's where it ends by any means, but it's just little adjustments that we'll have to make. And I think it's definitely worth reiterating that working with your project manager, working with us, keeping that communication open, as the field that you're in there. So welcome. But let's keep that going. So that's definitely important through the porting. Even when we're building out the users and how the hunt groups are going to ring, if we see maybe an incompatibility or something that doesn't necessarily flow, or it might not just be a best practice, we'll alert you to that, and we really try and keep the best solution on the way for the customers there. So yeah, definitely work with us. It's easily addressable. Some of these issues here, like spelling, right? We put in the suite name or number more so. These are things that are very easily correctable. But if it does take a week to get that info back, well, we just, delayed the completion of the deployment by a week, right? So stay close. Well, you'll see we're super responsive. So yeah, we all just want smooth deployments. That'll be definitely a big a partnership or really cooperation we'll go through there.
Yeah, and if there's any kind of confusion on the form, again, ask your project manager. Don't put something, don't guess, I guess is what I'm saying, because the project manager has a lot of experience, and they're more likely than not able to clear up any questions. It's important to note that for the porting process, the quickest it is usually takes would be about 5 business days. And it's not up to us. It's the losing carrier. It's whoever currently owns the phone number that's going to accept or reject the the request to move the phone number, from one company to another. And when they do accept it, then they're going to provide us a date of when it's going to happen. And these are things that are completely out of our control. So there's no downtime, though. You don't have to worry about that. During the process, we provide every single deployment one or many temporary phone numbers. So we always ask through the process that we ask our partners to follow, once everything's been done, we're actually going to forward their main number to this temporary number so that we could finish the cutover. That way, when the port actually happens, it's completely seamless. The end user, the customers, the people calling in are not going to notice anything. No calls are going to get cut. They're not going to miss a single call. Plus, if it gets rejected the first time around, we're just going to correct it with you, submit it again, and it doesn't really impact the end customer.
Yeah. Perfect.
So next section, endpoint deployment.
Yeah, this is absolutely one of my favorites. Again, Jason and I had a great time. We didn't put many steps, as there's not much, but just some of the things that we used to run into, and gosh, it brought back some wonderful memories for the most part. So you'll see that we did put there 5 to 10 minutes per phone. These are pre-configured. They're plug and play devices. There's nothing for you to do into the device itself for anything that we were able to push and config to. But it still will take you 5 to 10 minutes, believe it or not, to plug in a phone.
Minimum.
This is a minimum, yeah, right. And this is sort of an average across the company, because sometimes you'll get to someone's desk and gosh, I remember these days. So I get to the desk and I say, hey, Lucy, I'm just here to connect your new phone. It'll take me 1 minute. I just need to call you at the desk, plug the cable in, and you'll be back on your way. And then often, and Lucy was a wonderful woman, but it was, oh, let me finish this email. Oh, I have a call. I just need to do this here. Oh, this is finishing downloading, and this is a point of concern for her. So
Yeah.
it was often like, you're like, okay, well, I'll be right back then, and you go and try Sylvie, who sits next to her, and Sylvie she's maybe ready, but you can almost bet the next 3 won't be. So just getting the idea that you're going to be doing laps as people become available. I even had to set appointments with some people and find out where their breaks were just to plug in a phone. So
Yeah,
it's
so you'll
crazy.
develop like a system for that. What I used to do is I'd show up in like a boardroom or something with all the different boxes of phones, and I would first just unpack them all, right? Because they all come in a box. They got little plastics. There's a few, you got to put the curly cord, you got to plug it into the handset and the base of the phone and put on the little stand for the phone. So I'd get everything set up and then start walking around desk by desk by desk, and trying to convince Lucy to get off her email for a minute so that we can like crawl under her desk and plug in the patch cord to the wall, and then, plug in the computer itself into the back of the telephone before moving on to the next phone. So it doesn't seem like much, but you absolutely got to plan that, even if it's just like 20 phones at 10 minutes per phone, that's, you got like 3-4 hours there.
Yeah.
You might, I used to come in with a team just for that. I would honestly, I'd bring in some juniors just to help me plug in all the phones and unbox them all. And every time, bring extra long patch cables. It's going to happen. There's going to be cables that are too short. So just make it a habit. Whenever you go to customers, and I hope you're a lot of IT guys here, so that might be a norm, but have extra long patch cables in your vehicle at all times.
Yeah, I used to have just a box of cable there because you never know, and I just kind of clamp it on myself. But yeah, having that ready was something that, like he says, you can do your site survey and you can have a good understanding beforehand. But lo and behold, as you're going to go do it, well now, wonderful Lucy there, she needs now her desk to be on this side of the room, and it's just it's never the same. So yeah, having one kind of one or two on standby. Absolutely phenomenal best practice there.
Yes. Then you
This,
got to test everything, right? So as much as awesome as our onboarding teams are, um, you just got to test always everything. So when you build something, you get it delivered, make sure it's set up the way that you and your partner requested, and even make sure that it's still the way that your customer wants it to be. So every single phone number, test them all. Call into the automated attendant and test every single option. Make sure that, when you deployed the phones, that the buttons that you requested, the speed dials, the BLF keys, are actually on the phone as requested. And then any changes that need to be done, as I was saying below, during the deployment process, the customer will often change their mind about certain minor things. So, take a note of all of them. Within the checklist, and it's number 2 here in our tools and resources, there is a section for, hey, things that you need to have changed, tweaked, modified. So basically, ideally, plug in everything, do the round of the whole system, and come back to your onboarding project manager and say, hey, I want to change this, and this.
yeah, because even the speed dial is something that, again, my lovely Lucy there, last week she needed to have her main vendor as a top key, but this week now it's a new system and now she has a better feel, maybe for the phone. Well, now it needs to be on line key 3. So little things like that are going to come up. Again, it's part of the game. We offer that support for free. As Jason mentioned, just take a note and fire it off to us. So it doesn't actually cost you any extra time. Maybe a reconfirmation once it all goes through. And then again, poor Lucy here, I'm picking on her today. But so her having the phone, the infrastructure, she let me place the phone on her desk. So that's a big part of it. Now we have to get Lucy up to speed. So just be able to use this device in a way that works for her. So as you know, even in the MSP practice, maybe more so, every user has their own sort of idiosyncrasies, their little ways of doing. So doing a training or getting them comfortable is a big part of the process here. Is sometimes they have the features and they'll say, well, this doesn't work. And maybe it's just a little bit different. Maybe instead of *61, it's now *62, or something so small. So just be sure to try and pass that information over. Again, having that understanding of your customers' needs, as we saw earlier, will let you know what you have to focus on during your trainings. And that too, you can do it in a number of different ways. Personally, I used to grab groups of, let's say, 10 people, or departments, or if I, maybe just for the workflow there, maybe I'd have to grab one from each department and put them into a room. But I would often do that. I would say, here, bring your phone to the conference room normally. I have a switch, you'll plug in the phones here. And let's do a training. So you're going to call, Lucy's going to call Sylvie, John's going to call Matt. You're going to transfer a call to Lucy after and Matt to John. And we're really going to get a good feel to let them know that once you leave the building and the training wheels are off, that they'll be fine. They'll be a little more autonomous that way.
Absolutely. So the training, I just can't stress enough the importance of it. That is what's going to make the difference between a happy customer or an unhappy customer. It's the training, and it's the training. It kind of comes along with change management, right? They've been using something all this time, and now it's different. It's a disruption to them. They need to get used to it, and in that brief period, usually it's just a few days, but it can be frustrating to them. So I start my trainings like that, saying, hey, this is a new thing. So the buttons are at different places. It's a slightly different way of working it than whatever it is you had before. You might be frustrated the first couple of days. Just bear with me. Um, After a few days, you will get used to it. And obviously, if there's any changes to be done, that you don't wait a few days, just let us know. But just the being used to the phone and how it works and feeling comfortable with it takes a few days. So I used to do the same thing as you, James. I would take groups of 10 for any kind of bigger place. And for any customer that was like under 10 users, I would literally just walk to each person one by
Yeah.
one. And what they really, really need to know: how to make a call, how to answer a call, how to answer a second call, and be able to jump between the two, how to transfer a call from, their phone to somebody else, how to do a conference call. That's the basic things that almost everybody insists on knowing. Some people actually don't care about the conference call, don't care about the transfer call. They just want to make and receive phone calls. So, for those small places that are where you're going one by one, you kind of cater to what it is they need to know.
Yeah.
I also, the voicemail configuration, you're going to want to, ideally during the initial day of training, do everything you can to get the users to actually record their voicemail greeting. It's not a good phone system when every single user has the same pre-recorded message to leave, a message after
Yeah,
the beep.
that
It's not
automated thing.
personalized. Yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely not ideal. A last thing I'd maybe touch on this one here would be the reception or the operators. So whoever is handling the bulk of the calls, this is the person. Not to say that you have to convince, but this is the person that will perpetuate the right message. So if they're comfortable and they get it, that's often who their colleagues, maybe in accounting, who aren't as familiar, who don't use the phone as heavily, they're going to go see that person for their guidance and for their information. So yeah, so definitely making good friends with that person will go a super long way in terms of the company adoption overall.
100%. The person at the front desk that's answering the majority of those calls, that's the person you want to win over. It's not even the
Yeah,
president of the company. It's the person at the front desk. That person speaks to everyone that's coming in and out of the company. If she's happy with the phone and someone else complains about it, she's going to go and tell
fix
them
it.
what they're doing wrong.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So thank you, James. That was really, really good advice.
Yeah.
I'm going to
It's
move
something.
over.
Yeah, we're
Yeah.
ticking away here. So we have the
Yeah.
the last sort of the last thing is the cutover. This is sort of you climbed Everest here. You're at the peak right now. You're steps away. So as Jason mentioned earlier, then we do our deployment in such a way that there is no firm cutover. So there's no downtime more so. So what we do suggest, and definitely a best practice, is just to be there. So you can see our tools and resources required for this step on your end are really just a good cup of coffee, a smile, maybe a little patience, because this is the point where the training wheels, so to speak, they come off. People are gonna be like, "Oh, I know you showed me how to transfer a call, but where's the transfer button?" And when it's live, people's mentalities tend to shift a little bit. That was always one of my favorite parts of it all. So definitely just being there, being available. Again, I used to grab a cup of coffee or a tea, what have you there, and I just kind of walk through the company and say, hey, how's it going? Doing okay so far? Told you, not too crazy, right? And often the response is going to be, yeah, no, it's fine. It's same old. There's going to be a few change adoption, is something that you do have to be mindful of. So just to be there, staying around for about an hour is sort of like a best practice, just as everybody can get a call or two. And you can really make sure that once you do leave the building, that sort of panic doesn't break out, just that you've been there to address it preemptively.
Absolutely. Yeah. Again, that I can't stress enough how much people appreciate that, especially the person at front desk. So when you do that call forward, you grab your cup of coffee, find a little stool, sit down next to the person at the front desk, and just let them go through their first 2, 3, 4, 5 calls. Make sure that they're good with answering, transferring, answering, transferring. That's the bulk of what they do.
Excellent. I don't know if we had, I don't know if we're
We
going to do a last poll section or we're just going
Yes.
to, yeah, okay,
Yeah.
we'll do a
A
quick one
quick
here.
quick poll. I'd like to know if any of you have feedback to give on this particular process. So I'm not asking for the feedback right now. I just want to know who here has feedback, positive, negative, just for the sake of us improving. Anything that you'd like to share with us? Basically, people that are saying yes will probably get a phone call from me, because I'm very curious about the processes and how you see them and how you think where we're shining, where we could improve.
And it's something too that's really goes throughout ShareWeb and our practices. So I'll sort of take off my VoIP hat for a minute here. But this is something that we do have an online feedback form as well. So this is really across the board. So Jason will definitely reach out for all things VoIP, for all things telecom that be. But if you did have any feedback, any product suggestions as well of new things you'd like to see us carry, or new processes you'd like to see us have in place, well, we do have a feedback form. It is accessible through your Cumulus account. And definitely leave your feedback there, as Jason and the other product team members do regularly look at that. So it is actually a phenomenal way. We've seen some great improvements thanks to suggestions from you. So really don't be shy. We want to hear it all, good, bad, or other. We work with you. We want to be what you need us to be. So for the most part, I think we do pretty well. But hey, there's always room for improvement.
Mm-hmm. So anyone that said yes, I will be reaching out. Apparently, I don't have a lot of people to reach out to, but I shall. So almost final section, best practices. So we just decided, James and I, we picked a few to discuss, but there's a lot of best practices, and this is a very, very large industry, and there's so many ways to set up a call flow that we can't put them all. But the key here, just like almost everything for the deployment of any SureWeb VoIP service, is to listen to and work with your project manager during the onboarding process. They will be giving these best practices as you explain to them how your customer wants their phone system programmed. They might jump in and say, hey, probably not the best idea because of this and that. It's kind of worth it to stop for a second and consider it and make sure that you still want to do it that way, and your customer really wants to do it that way.
So we have our top three, as Jason mentioned. There's a ton, but definitely the DIDs is sort of the first one that I think is worth. And again, we have about 5 minutes, so we'll skim through it. Again, reach out to us. We're always around to chat. But this is something that we see quite frequently, as Jason mentioned. Everyone, when we had those cascading numbers, often we'd see people kind of assign those numbers to individual users. Which, it's a means to an end, and it's a good way to be contacted. It's not something that we're seeing as much, as VoIP doesn't have the limitation of having one call per line anymore, or per DID for that matter. So sort of a less is more. As you can see, we both liked our submissions for the name of the slide here. So less is more, but simple is better. So I always kind of put this out there. It's okay. So I have my own DID, I have my own phone number. I'm calling customers. They know if they want to reach James, well, this is the number. Shockingly, every now and then James will take a day off. Yeah, I have one tomorrow, and boy, is that going to be great. But anyway, so all this to say, if they only know my number to reach me at individually and I'm not there, well, then it's what happened to ShareWeb. So it's a way, and it's a very nice personalized. It rings to me. It stays in the IVR, but it's not necessarily the best in terms of business continuity. So let's say I leave, and somebody else inherits my extension number or my DID, but now it's for a different department. There's so much that can go along with that. So definitely something that we see a lot, but the best practice would definitely be to have it more centralized. If I want to reach ShareWeb, this is the number.
Yeah.
James's extension is
main number, extension number. That's it.
Yeah. So a
because
lot
it
more.
doesn't scale, right? What happens, you start off, imagine ShareWeb, we started off, almost 20 years ago, it was probably Peter and Matthew.
Yeah.
Yeah. And now we're like 700, 800 users. Imagine we gave a phone number to everybody as they came in. Just the nightmare that would be to manage. And that phone number, your main company number, that's kind of like almost like a trademark or a logo.
It's your branding.
It's your branding. Thank you, James. Yeah. So we're not saying no, you can do it. It's absolutely doable. We're just saying it's not a best practice. So unless the company is already running like that and they've been giving out these cards with all these phone numbers for each user, well, you're kind of like you already started the wrong practice, and now they got to manage these for the rest of the time the business is going. So we can absolutely do it. But if you're starting a new business, we don't recommend it. Like pick and choose the people that have the direct phone numbers.
And for those that I'm working on a deployment with a partner right now where he does have that same scenario where it's just grandfathered in and we always had them, so I just have to keep them. So we're on a plan with him now. We're into our second year where he brought in all the numbers initially, but now we're seeing every month he's dropping a phone number or two, as we do offer sort of month-to-month billing. So you can bring them in to sort of keep what was, and then as the volumes on those lines or those DIDs drop, well, you can adjust kind of midstream with us. Yeah, so again, it's very manageable, but just best practices, let's keep the customer experience as it should be. That
Right.
would be one.
Managing expectations, I'm not going to go into, because it's kind of everything we've been talking about today, right? So it's important that you manage the expectations with your customer as much as it is that you understand them yourselves. So, we are responsible, and we have a 5.9 SLA for the cloud PBX, our carriers, the configuration, but there's things that are out of our control, and we're going to require the help of the partner, or maybe the help of the ISP that's providing the internet connection to that.
And we'll be there again to support for any other
Oh,
ideas. If you want to put in UPS or something of the sort to ensure a little bit more redundancy, these are all things we can walk you through. But
yeah.
our solution does have the soft phone included, so so you
And
can see we picked up the pace here a little. So
yeah,
we're both watching the clock here.
So the
Uh,
last one, then I kind of wanted to just skip ahead, but I gotta say, overly complicated IVRs and hunt groups.
maybe
Again,
Maybe I was going to say, just a disclaimer, if you guys want, like we're free for the next few minutes, so it'll most likely run over the 1 hour. So if anyone want to stick around and have a Q&A there, we'll be here. We're just trying to squeeze it into 1 hour now, but we're gonna stick
yeah,
around.
definitely. So just overly complicated IVRs and hunt groups. Um, there's very little times where you should be making people wait for like a minute or two without actually getting to speak to someone. That's not the best practice. People would rather leave a message and get a call back promptly. Again, we're not talking about call centers here, right? So when a call flow where you call and you have a menu, and then you press 1 for something, and then it'll ring 3 people, and then if they don't answer, it goes to another menu that gives them other options that are going to go ring 4 more people, and if those 4 people don't answer, then it's going to add 6 people to that queue, ring for another 20 seconds, and then go into the mailbox, a general mailbox of this, which is going to copy that message to 4 different people. We can absolutely do that, but it's not a best practice. That's even for the person calling in, for the users that are on the phone, that's complicated. Set up a group, set up, where does the call go if there's no answer to that group? Keep it simple. And it's not because it can't be done, it's the best experience for everybody that's using the phone system. Because remember, that's who really matters here. It's the people calling into that business and the actual employees of that business being able to answer and make calls. So simple is better.
Yeah, another one for the IVRs, one that I used to see so often is a 3-person company that has a 10 level or a 10 option IVR, and it points to the same 1 or 2 people. Well, definitely, maybe keeping that a little bit more streamlined. Definitely, it is good for appearances. It'll make you look a little bit more established, a little bigger than they may be. But yeah, if all your options are pointing to the same one, chances are they probably know you by name at this point. So maybe just having a for James press 2 could be some that may be more in line there. And
I would kind of best practice you on that one, James, and say it's maybe not best to say a physical person's name though within the IVR menu, because what happens, gosh forbid that you leave, unless you're the owner of the company.
I would hope so. One day, Jason. One day.
So
Oh,
all of this, I know it's kind of heavy, but we wanted to really set the expectations properly with our partners and say the right message. So we have a plug and play solution. It is plug and play for people that are from the telecom world, where you'll see that we've taken out almost all of the work from the telecom side of things, from the phone system, the PBX side of things. But we are absolutely counting on our partners to validate the local network And if there are call quality issues, those are usually not an instant fix because we need to do troubleshooting to find out where the issue is coming from. And again, most of the time it's something to do with the local network or that person's ISP. We have a lot of tools, we have a lot of tips and tricks, but we got to go through that process to be able to troubleshoot it and to fix it. But we're always there for you. We got 24/7, 365 days a year support. And especially during the onboarding, that's a huge white glove service of onboarding. So you just tell us what you need. You don't have to have the technical knowledge of the PBX side of things. That's us. And then we're going to work with you and ask you to do certain tests and validations.
Yeah, awesome. And I think there's one point just on the previous slide there that could be a pretty cool poll question. As we do offer all these best practices, all the stuff that we can support you with, we would definitely want to take it a little bit further. So I know I do get a chance to speak with many of you from a sales and positioning side. But when it comes to technical, the product side of things, it's like we're in sync here. But
Yeah,
which
what just
which
happened there?
That's it. But so the question here is, would you be interested in taking part in a VoIP training? So Jason is looking to, along with our product team, to offer you a training. So it'd most likely be, I think you were looking at about a day, Jason, or what does that training look like
Um, the
tentatively?
I think it'll depend on what people are asking for.
Yeah.
From my experience, I'd like to do a 2 or 3 day training if possible. That'll really cover everything from A to Z. But if our partners need more of a half day or 1 day training, then that's what we're going to be doing.
Yeah,
Um,
so feel free to hit the yes here. And then Jason, again, he'll reach out. We'll kind of gauge to what level of training, and then definitely we can tailor something to sort of the masses here. Yeah.
Absolutely. And this is for like a group training or something, you know, in general. But any of you, if you want a training right now, if you need help right now, call your account manager, or if you're in onboarding or you've already got clients with Cloud PBX, just call support, right? I've been saying since the beginning, we'll do it for you. Just tell us what you want. But at the same time, for the PBX end of things, for the most part, you're able to do it yourselves if you're so inclined to. So you could also call and say, show me how to do this. And we're totally happy how to do that, to help you with that.
Yeah, it's the old give a man a fish or teach a man to fish proverb there, but that's really it. So we want you to be as autonomous, never alone, but definitely do have the tools to be a little bit more autonomous and do things on your own. So if you don't know how, if it's not clear, if it's maybe some feature you can't quite wrap your head around, no worries, right? You're new to it. There's no problem with that whatsoever. We'll definitely handhold and really walk through that with you. Even if we do it once or twice until it really gets through, these are things where we're definitely more than capable and more than able to help you with.
Absolutely.
Perfect. So I think that is it for the slides. I guess we can open up a quick Q&A. Again, we are running over. If any of you have to go, we will forgive you this time. But yeah, if you had any questions, stuff like that, Jason, I would love to address them. Whatever we don't get through the Q&A today, we'll probably let it run maybe another 5 minutes or so. So we'll just reach out to you as we do in our previous webinars there. We'll reach out to you, either Jason or myself, to address them one by one.
Absolutely. So like you were saying, we've kind of gone over our time, and I don't want to take too much time from our partners. So I'm gonna take 2 questions, or I'm gonna give 2 answers, I should say. First answer is the answer to multiple questions. Yes, everybody will be getting a copy of this presentation, and the video for this webinar will be available. So that answers a whole bunch of people's questions. And James, I'm gonna ask you this one on behalf of one of our partners. Partner, if I had 2 or 3 phones, is there a test phone number that I can practice with myself and my techs?
Yeah, so if you have your own devices, yeah, so the answer is yes, absolutely. So we offer a demo account in which you can actually try the service, exactly that, for its 3 users. And you'll have the service for about a week's time. We can extend it, so a week is sort of the starting point. But yeah, you can definitely, we'll give you a phone number with that as well. You'll be able to make calls internally, externally, and really get a good feel for the solution. Test quality, you'll have access to the portal as well, to do your hunt groups, IVRs, etc. So yeah, so absolutely yes. When doing so, I'd strongly suggest to work with your account manager, who will normally loop myself or Jason in. We'll just give you a quick run through of the portal. Just because what we found is when we just kind of give access to the portal, people kind of look at it, they don't know what to do, and then the demo sits for a week and they don't actually get to try it. So a really quick training, I'll usually like a 20-minute walkthrough. Here's where you find the main key things here, then go through and play with it on your own. So yes, absolutely, that is something we can do. A small sort of asterisk there, or just a little tidbit of extra there. If you are bringing your own devices, that is something that for a demo account, it doesn't get the same priority as our live customers, definitely. So it may take about a day or so for us to associate the max there, just because, again, production environments are where the focus are for us. So a small blip there, but otherwise, yes, absolutely, you can bring your own devices and even practice a config on a device that maybe we don't support entirely as well. So yeah, absolutely.
Super. So with that, I think we're gonna call it a webinar because we've already gone 8 minutes over. So on behalf of all of SureWeb, thank you so much to everybody that joined. Thank you for the people that answered the poll questions and that sent out questions within the question section. Anything we didn't answer, we will be reaching out to you separately to answer your questions. If there's any questions you haven't already asked, please reach out to your account manager at SureWeb. Just call our sales department and they are gonna happily loop in James or I or whoever's necessary to answer your questions. So thank you.
Absolutely, yeah. All the best, everyone. Happy hunting, and yeah, we'll see you on the next next iteration of this here.